Hello, Suan.
Hello there. How are you both?
Very good, thanks.
Good,
Yeah,
good,
very
good,
good.
good.
Really pleased to meet you. And well, film, stage, TV presenter, host, YouTube voice artist, voiceovers for computer games. You do so much, and you're so successful at all that. Delighted to be chatting with you. And you're originally from South Africa, and then you moved to LA, and you are in London now, aren't you? And
I
have been for
am.
some time. Yeah.
Yes, I've been in London for about 20 years now. So, um, well traveled and have had a career, I guess, on three different continents, but originally from South Africa, as you said, and then I lived in LA for a long time. And then I met my husband, who's English, and so I moved here, and now I'm afraid I'm English too. Can't get rid of me now.
Here for good.
But I think you originally went to America, didn't you, for a short while and ended up staying there 14 years or something, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what was meant to be a kind of like look-see trip and look around, I ended up staying there for yeah, just under 14 years. So
Wow.
amazing, really. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. You've had a fantastic career on stage, television, films. Can we talk about the major milestones? Maybe starting with working in South Africa for
Sure.
MM.net. You had your own
Yes, so
award-winning travel series.
correct. So Mnet was really interesting. I mean, is really interesting actually, because South Africa, a bit like the UK, and it's funny because my American kind of contemporaries and friends can never understand this. They're like, "You only had four channels? What?" You know?
Yeah.
But South Africa was kind of like the UK in the sense that they were really only, I think, four or three or four channels, which were all kind of government controlled and quite strict
Oh,
in what they broadcast. We got quite a lot of like really badly dubbed BBC series. I say badly dubbed
yeah.
because they were so quintessentially British and then they were kind of dubbed into Afrikaans.
Oh, weird.
So there would sort of be Jane Eyre, going, "Oh, dit is 'n baie lekker koppie koffie." Um, but Mnet decided to come in and really shook things up. They were an independent channel, a bit like HBO, I guess,
Channel 4, maybe?
um, a bit like Channel 4, a kind of a cross between VH1, Channel 4, and probably HBO. And they came in and they were the first independently owned channel. And they decided to really do things their own way. And they held an open audition. And what they used to do in those days, I mean, they don't even have that anymore now.
Yeah.
I'm that old that they used to have things called continuity announcers or
Oh, yeah,
presenters or
yeah,
hosts in America.
yeah.
And that was what the audition was for. And because I was bilingual, I went and I auditioned and I got the job. And that sort of opened the doors to my career in South Africa because that led from kind of being on Mnet and being in people's homes 5 days a week. That gave me so much more exposure. And that led to Bon Voyage, which was the travel series,
Yeah.
which I look back now and I think what an amazing learning curve it was because there was no autocue.
Yeah.
There was no like, we were a skeleton crew of five people on the
Wow.
hoof in extraordinary places and like places I would never probably get to stay now.
Yeah.
The George Sank, the Cipriani in Venice, like these extraordinary hotels. And it really taught me my craft because I had to learn great big wads of text very quickly.
Yeah.
Very often we'd only get one take because like the director would be like, "Okay, the train's coming in. It's the Orient Express. We're in Venice. The sun's setting, so you've got one shot, so don't F it up." I was like, "Okay." Um,
First
so
class travel.
yeah, exactly. First class
Wow.
travel, which,
Wow.
I was 21 or 22, and I just thought, well, this is great.
Hmm.
I had no idea, but it was fantastic because, as I said, I had to write a lot of my own scripts, always edited by my fantastic directors. And it really taught me to retain material very quickly because there was in the studio we had autocue, but certainly not when we were doing Bon Voyage and we
Yeah.
were traipsing about, the various exotic locations that we were in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an award-winning travel series as well, wasn't it? So even better considering. I
Ye-
I'd imagine.
yes, I think it won. we were nominated definitely for a Star Tonight Award, which was sort of like the Evening Standard Awards, I guess, in the UK. The Star was the biggest newspaper, probably still is, I think. And then I think they did win several awards, and it was great because there was a brilliant series, actually, I think in the late 80s, 90s here in the UK, presented by Magenta Divine, called The Rough Guide.
Oh, yeah.
And it was largely based on that. That was the inspiration for Bon Voyage. We didn't quite go as imaginative with the name, but it was that kind of presenting. Young people, it was myself and then another presenter called Ashley Hayden. So we would alternate. She would do a show, I would do a show. We only did one show together, which was Paris. But it was that kind of, they wanted a fresh energy and a fresh take on it. And I'm so delighted because I got to see the world at a very young age, you know.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, you also, after that, you went on to host the Miss World pageant for 2 years. You received the People's Choice Award for South Africa's Most Beautiful Woman in 1993. That's amazing.
Wow.
So just tell us a little bit about that experience, how that all came about.
Oh, gosh. Well, Miss World, again, kind of came about, I think, from being in people's homes and being sort of being a presenter. So the other thing Mnet used to do in the early days of kind of like Sky boxes and, you know, any kind of like in America, HBO boxes, they would do it with HBO with fights. So Mnet had this thing where the box was called a decoder, but for 2 hours a night in South Africa, you didn't have to subscribe to, they would do a free 2 hours for the entire country. And obviously it was a way of enticing viewers in. But for us, the people who worked on the channel, it was massive exposure because for those 2 hours between 5 and 7 p.m., we got national exposure and international throughout Africa. And then they decided to do Miss World at Sun City because I guess technically it wasn't South Africa. And I was lucky enough to be one of the hosts. And then so I didn't do it consecutively. I can't even remember the years I did it. I think it was 94. Anyway, it's on the internet somewhere.
92 and 94, I think it was.
Yeah. So in one of them, I only sat in the kind of booth doing the sort of breakdowns of, you know, all the statistics, which is hilarious because I'm the worst person with numbers. And then the second one, I kind of like graduated to the stage and I co-hosted it with a wonderful, lovely guy called Richard Steinmetz, who is still a friend, who was an actor, is still an actor, an American actor. And I guess it just sort of that kind of thing, you know, it was a different time, the 90s, you know, beauty pageants were
off the time.
Big business. And I think that sort of led to all sorts of different, you know, they kind of, ended up doing lots of magazine shoots and being on the covers of magazines. I mean, I was never a model ever, but because of Mnet and sort of being well known and all through that, I kept acting and doing stuff on stage and, you know, various things. And I think that just sort of led to this nomination of this award, which I'm delighted still. I mean, particularly now because I'm 110, so now it's quite nice to look back and think I had that, you know.
So I'm from South Africa, as you mentioned. You moved to LA for a short period and ended up staying there for 14 years, working on primetime television shows such as Whose Line Is It Anyway? And mostly as Goddess Hathor. How do you pronounce that? Hathor. In the Stargate television series, MGM and Sky. Was this the acting highlight for you? Was that the most exposure?
I think it was a combination of things. It's certainly at the time it wasn't because I was on Stargate in their first season. So and I think like midway through the first season. So, you know, it was so different. Like kids don't understand today how different TV was. You know, there was no binge watching, there was no streaming, there was no internet. So you had no idea. You had to wait till the end of a season. And then the producers would take it and then they would do the Nielsen ratings and check to see what was popular and what had done well. Obviously, with Stargate, they had an amazing chemistry with their 4 leads. Plus, Richard Dean Anderson, coming hot off MacGyver, had already had a fan base. And I think the original film, had a massive fan base. And Hathor and Stargate have actually ended up being the job for me that has given me the most later in my life.
Okay.
Had a wonderful time when I was shooting it, had a great time, but I had no idea. You know, I went in, I did a week, did my episode, got a lovely call at the end of the first season saying the character's really popular. We're going to bring you back for like a cliffhanger, which they did.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, I was never seen again, much to my chagrin.
Oh.
But the character lives on because the Stargate fandom is incredible. Honestly, they're the most loyal, most supportive, most fantastic fandom in the world. And because of that, I've been able to travel and go to Australia and Atlanta and all sorts of things, all because of Hathor. So, yes,
Brilliant.
I would say it was a definite highlight.
Brilliant. 68th Academy Awards.
Yes, which almost I told you the 67th. So
yeah, you
did.
Yeah. We mentioned
pointing that out. I told you I was terrible with numbers.
I was going to ask you about Pulp Fiction. What was the main winner that year? But what was the main winner for the 68th? Can you remember?
Yes, Braveheart.
Yeah, Mel Gibson.
I think.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant film.
Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing because that came about because I had one of the producers that I'd worked with in South Africa had moved to Singapore quite bizarrely and was working for Singapore Television. So while I was in LA, he rang me and said, could you do a few little inserts in and about Los Angeles and down in Santa Monica and, you know, under the Hollywood sign? And so it sort of started as that. And then I became a kind of like regular correspondent for Singapore Today or something like that, for the segment that he was producing. And he then got it together for us to go to the Oscars. But it was, what an amazing experience, because we actually didn't have access to inside the Oscars. Yeah. So it sounds a lot more glamorous than the actual job was. Yeah. And it was a really, really steep learning curve. I've never been more grateful in my life that I'm an obsessive movie buff.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of the first things I realized when I got there, because obviously it's very exciting and you get given your press accreditation. It was a bit like when I went to Buckingham Palace, you know, you get given all this information and all this stuff, and that stuff is kind of cool. But when we got to the pre-rehearsal for the Oscars, I realized really quickly that on one side, so like this is the red carpet here, on one side you've got the American press who've all got like acres of room and teams of people and hair people and makeup. And on the other side, you've got about 120 of the world's press crammed onto like a grandstand with people standing on each other's heads and shoving. And you have no say as to where you are allocated on that kind of grandstand. Yeah. And we got really lucky because we were just on the second row. We had the Dutch crew in front of us and China behind us. I just remember that. And it just becomes exactly what you see on television, this free-for-all with everybody shouting the actors' names and complete pandemonium. And it's really difficult as a host to stay engaged with the camera, keep your eye out for who's coming up the red carpet. I mean, it's different today because then they had publicists who would walk ahead of the actors, and you have to really, that's the person you have to get, is the publicist to get somebody to come over. But one of the two highlights of that night for me, and probably one of the greatest memories I have and treasure, is that Robin Williams, who was one of my most favorite actors in the world. I mean, I cried for a week when he died. He was on the red carpet and his publicist was walking ahead of him, and we kept saying, please come here, we're South African. And she was just like, no. And I don't know what possessed me, but I like elbowed the Dutch crew out the way, and I was like, whatever I said. I mean, I don't think it made that film then. But I just completely, I can't even remember what I screamed, but I was just like, we're from South Africa! I was like this demented woman. And I think he just was sort of like, and I made him laugh. I can't remember what I said, but I made him laugh. And he said to the publicist, no, I'm going to go. And he came over and he gave us 30 seconds or whatever. Wow. But I remember after that turning to camera and going, well, I could die a happy woman. Robin Williams came to talk to
us. Brilliant.
It's a wonder you didn't get arrested.
I know, right. Well, I mean, it's all like that. It's just everybody shouting. It's honestly, and it's like 5 hours of constant noise. I remember getting back to the hotel that night.
Wow.
Yeah, because you're there for hours Because what you don't see on television is that people start arriving, like the D-list, the C-list celebrities all start coming first, and then only just as they get closer to the ceremony. But even that, they herd them onto the red carpet because everybody has to be interviewed and everybody has to be talked to. Then they get inside, then there's another preamble, then there's another preamble, then they seat everyone, and only then. And it's an endless night. I mean, all actors who go talk about it, saying, you know, you end up in the bar and there's no food, so everybody just ends up getting pissed. Sort of like desperate for some sort of contact with food and alcohol, you know, to get you through it. But it was an extraordinary experience, and one I'm so pleased to have done.
Absolutely amazing, yeah. And then you moved to the UK in 20 years ago, 2002. Since then, you've won multiple awards for stage roles, including Funny Bones. And there's far too many to mention because there's a big a massive list, isn't there? But can you tell us about your one-woman show, Sailing Somewhere?
Yes, so that was a really extraordinary project that we did in 2019, actually. And that was, of course, who knew what was coming, right?
Yeah.
But that is written by a really talented friend of mine who is a writer and a playwright and now screenwriter, called Matthew Hurt. And Matthew had written this one-woman play about a woman on a cruise ship who is, in essence, hiding away from something really traumatic. And then they added 6 original songs to the piece. And because I sing as well, I got to do it. And the composer is an amazing composer called Connor Mitchell. He's an Ivor Novello Award winner. He's so talented. And so I felt incredibly lucky to be working with these 2 gentlemen, and then my wonderful pianist, Noam Galperin, who's also amazing. And in essence, it's a story, as I said, about this woman who, and it's not set in South Africa, but because both Matthew and I originally are from South Africa, when we started rehearsals, we were playing with accents and stuff. And we originally made her American, then we tried to make her English. And then I said, you know, I don't know if it's because we are both from there originally, but there's like a cadence to her speech that feels familiar and South African. So we ended up making her South African. And basically the story is quite hard hitting because as the play unfolds, she gets more and more drunk because she's revealing more and more about herself. And in the end, it turns out that she's coming back to face her daughter, who she's not spoken to for years because she witnessed the daughter being sexually abused and didn't do anything. She ran away. So put it this way, it was quite interesting. We had some people come, which I'm sure happens to actors when they've been in a show that's, you know, so you're known for something else. So we had a few Stargate fans and a couple of Mamma Mia fans coming to see the show who were like, woohoo, we're coming to see a happy musical. And the first song was very like, we're on a ship, I'm singing, we're having fun. And by the end, people were just like, kind of in their seats going, oh my God, what have I seen? But I was so proud of it because I got so many letters afterwards, and people contacting me on Instagram really struck a chord. People just saying, I come from something similar, or so I was really quite shocked by that, but also so moved that it affected people in that way. And I think the venue that we did it at is quite known for doing quite sort of glitzy, glamorous cabarets, fantastic cabarets. And they were really cool and kind of open about it. And I had one woman come to me afterwards saying, oh, I come to everything here. And I didn't know anything about you or the show. And she said, I was so shocked. And she said at one point, I was like, I almost wanted to leave. And then I was like, no, this is extraordinary. And she said, this is absolutely brilliant. I'm coming back tomorrow night. And she came for the entire run. She came every single night. So I was like, God, even if we just get one, you know, that felt like that. That's an amazing achievement.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Another part of your skill set, I think this was during the COVID pandemic, during the lockdown period. You created your own YouTube channel, Haythor Hosts.
Yeah.
You're still doing these now. It looks like you got loads of followers and loads of views. Really popular.
we basically decided to, or I decided, as like all other actors, as the world started to close and everything started getting cancelled, I watched. And of course, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had no idea we were in for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, oh, well, I've got nothing for the next 6 months. And I think it was one of those serendipitous moments where everyone, the people in my world, the actors that I know, were all at home because everyone was in the same boat. And so originally it didn't start on YouTube. I started doing Instagram lives because it was sort of just as everybody was doing them. But the thing about Instagram is you have no control as the host. I mean, I watched one yesterday with somebody quite well known. I was just about to say, and then I thought, no, maybe I shouldn't say this.
Okay.
But I could see how frustrating it was for them because they had to keep stopping and starting because the video froze and the sound dropped out.
Wow.
And I've seen so many like that where people just keep, and it's because I think whatever compression tools they use, probably because so many people are making videos. Anyway, the fact is that I had zero control over it. And so I would spend all this time prepping an interview. Also, you only get an hour. And because I wasn't just talking about Stargate, I was trying to interview people about their lives and their careers, that hour would go really, really fast. And then I was approached by a friend who is a producer, and he said, look, I'll help you. Well, let's set up a YouTube channel. And we then got onto this fantastic bit of software called StreamYard, which gives you, it's kind of like Zoom, but it allows you to do a few more things here and there. And that was amazing. And as I said, I just got lucky. And then we did one season. I think I did something like 20 episodes in a row. And then also the fans were so amazing. This is what I mean by the Stargate fans.
Yeah.
Everyone just got on board and got behind it. They helped me. They kind of came up with a theme tune. I asked people if they wanted to. I said, just so you know, there's no money. But I said, I'd really love some sort of like opening credits. And the more we worked on it, the more, because I guess that's my background in TV, I was like, I knew how I wanted it to look. I didn't want it to be some sort of like rinky dink, and I got so frustrated with Instagram because it kept screwing up our show.
Yeah.
And then I remember somebody saying to me, oh, but that's part of the charm that you're always screwing up. And I was like, no. So yeah, and then we created I was helped by one of my co-producers who's an amazing, very technically able and also so that was just super helpful. And then another girl who I met via internet, via Twitter, and who's a fan of Stargate. She's a graphic designer, so she designed all the posters right from the start, all the way through. And it started with her just doing it naturally, and then I started using them because they were so much better than what I had. And so yeah, the show just took off and got a following. I mean, I do have some plans for the future, but what I would love to do is to do Half of Hosts live.
Yeah.
I would love to have a venue where we could invite an actor and somehow sort of combine a meet and greet with an interview situation.
Yeah.
But I think until we are fully back in the room with everybody, that is a work in progress.
Okay.
But we'll see. Maybe there'll be the odd one-off special and stuff like that. I mean, I do feel I constantly get letters from fans asking if we can do more and, will there be a season 3? So watch this space.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Joanne, what was that software called again?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Oh, StreamYard. It's really fantastic. StreamYard. Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, it might honestly be worth having a look at.
I'm just making a note now. Yeah. I was going to ask that exactly same question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really excellent. And what's brilliant is that it allows you, when you're broadcasting, it gives you, your guest can come on in like a virtual green room.
Oh, yeah.
So you guys can see the guest, but the public can't. And then it also tells the guest, because I have lots of people who are like, am I on? Am I on?
Oh, yeah.
And it tells you, it says, you are not currently visible. Your mic is off, and it automatically turns the microphone on. So the guest has to do very little other than just be there. And I found that super helpful. And then also there's loads of things. It gives you great backgrounds if you want to use that. I mean, loads and loads and loads of things. Really excellent.
Sounds good.
And it's not an ad. I don't work for them.
No, that'll be brilliant. Yeah. Okay, moving on then. Hypothetical question. If stage, TV and film roles all paid similar contract fees, which one would you prefer? Which is your favourite?
Oh, well, firstly, it's never ever been about the money for me, ever. Don't go into acting if you're trying to make money. That's like, you know, I mean, you can. There are the jobs that pay exceptionally well, but it's not known for being a well-paid profession. Um, I think that's impossible to answer because for me, all three of them, musicals give you something different to traditional theatre or straight theatre. Um, Theatre is completely different to stand up. Stand up is very different to film. They all different. And I am so grateful that I've been able to work in all three mediums. Three mediums, is that right? Anyway, across the board.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to have done, to have done lots of work. I love them all. And I love that film is such a collaborative thing. You need to have lots of people to make a product at the end work. And I love that in theatre, you get a chance to do it again and again and again until you feel it's at a place, and it's never the same and it changes constantly. I'm about to start rehearsals for a new job, and I'm so excited about being back in a rehearsal room for the first time since Sailing Somewhere, really. So
Yeah.
since 2019.
Oh, brilliant. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
if you're down in London, come and see us.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send
It's called
you a
The
message.
Greatest Night of the Jazz Age. So do come and see us.
Okay. For me,
Yeah.
in case that you thought that your brilliant career lacked any kind of variety, you've recently got involved with computer games, supermassive games, doing the voiceover on a game called The Devil in Me. Can you tell us about this? I think it's the background as well. I think I've taken this from your Twitter profile.
Oh, right. So that's Dying Light 2, which was the sequel to obviously Dying Light. And I ended up playing one of the leads in this. I play a character called Sophie.
Yeah.
And yeah, voice acting is quite new to me in the sense that I've done voice work for years and years and years, but I've usually done traditional commercials and stuff like that. But voice acting is kind of like acting, but in a way much harder because
It's harder.
It's harder because they don't see you.
Oh.
So sometimes you are voicing something that hasn't been animated yet. And it's quite amazing that when you haven't got this, when you can't emote with your face, you have to make it happen with your voice. And it's a new skill. I'm so delighted to be flashing it out, thrashing it out, not flashing it, thrashing it out. Flashing it is a whole different thing. But yeah, and then The Devil in Me is a massive, massive game. I'm only a tiny part of it. I play a coroner and one other character. But it looks terrifying, I have to say. Like I don't personally game, but again, the gaming community has been massively supportive, and I've just worked on a new game coming out next year. I can't say what that is yet. But yeah, I'm loving it. And it's a brilliant job to have, because you get to be so creative and play different, you can be any age, because of course it's how your voice sounds. They don't see what you look like. And I love that. I find that massively liberating. So I just recently played a sort of very old kind of like Eastern European witch kind of character for something. And that was, you know what I mean? I would never get cast as that. Not yet, anyway.
Ben, do you still have to go for auditions, or does your reputation and your show reel open doors for you anyway? Do people still want?
Nope. Still have to audition like everybody else.
Yep. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. You got a final question, Terry?
Yeah. It's we change it around. Most of the chats we have are with writers, and we usually say, "Can you give us any advice for a new writer?" But could you give us any advice for a newcomer to what you do, to acting and your hosting roles?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is really make sure that you love doing it, because if there's anything else that you feel you'd rather be doing, then that's a good thing to know. Because I think acting is a bit like the priesthood, it's a calling. You have to be 100% committed. And then the other thing is, I would just say, do your homework, which is really easy nowadays. Look at drama schools, look at the actors who inspire you. If you don't want to go to drama school because it's not necessarily the right fit for everyone, look at the plays or the films or the things that inspire and move you, and then start doing look up at the actors who work in those shows and try and find out more about the craft, and then take it from there. Because really today there's so much accessible. There are online courses, there's drama schools, there's you know, short courses that you can take. You can specialize just in film work or voice work. There's so much more available today. So I would just say dive in and see what feels like the right fit for you, and give it a go. If it's something you are passionate about, do it.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute delight sitting and chatting with you. I'm really looking forward to this, and I think it's been brilliant. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you both for having me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Brilliant. And I wish you a happy weekend, and yeah, speak to you soon, I'm sure.